Hello again, everybody. Welcome to My Taste is Better Than Yours. This is Samuel hosting this week. And as you can see, we're doing Jumping to Conclusions yet again. We have another serialization from Weekly Shounen Jump. Enzo, we're here to talk about two titles this time. And
Mm.
I think we can do a good check in of where we are as well with some other series in the magazine because we had a big batch last time and it seems like the lifespan of those ones are becoming a little bit more obvious. So let's check in with the previous round. I think it's fair to say we were pretty positive on the variety and the focus that round had, based on those initial chapters that we read. And I want to ask you, Enzo, is there any of those series that you're still reading, still keeping up with, and rooting for to actually survive in the magazine?
Yeah, I'm still reading Harukaze Mound, and I'm still reading Ekiden Bros, even though I know that has no chance. Spoilers. Kaidagami, sort of tell myself I'm still reading it, but I find myself drifting behind on it and not really feeling motivated to read the chapters. So it's kind of one of those. It's like, oh, I have like 10 minutes until my next meeting or whatever. Maybe I'll give Kaitagami a read, catch up on it. But I'm sort of half reading it. Ping Pong Peril, I dropped that after two chapters and have never looked back on that one.
Yeah, I feel like you got your obligation out of the way to talk about it here, and then you didn't
Mm.
force yourself to get into it anymore.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
I'm keeping up with all of them still. Uh, my
Of
opinion
course.
remains, yes, of course. My opinion remains the same. I really enjoy Harukaze Mound. I think there are maybe some directions that I would have changed. I feel like we should have saw the other brother a little bit sooner, maybe. But I'm liking the as more characters are being introduced, it feels like there's more confidence behind it than the other titles at the moment, which kind of feel like they're rushing towards trying to find something to cling on to because, yeah, those other three series are kind of struggling in Weekly Shonen Jump at the moment. They're kind of all circling near the bottom, which I'm actually a little surprised for Kaitagami. I thought it had a chance of doing better, but I think it's a good series. But I also feel like it introduced these villains, and sometimes it all just feels very short term. There's nothing really, I think, to cling on to and like get that hyped for in the long run, which I think something like Harukaze Mound does. And then yeah, Ikinen Bros and Ping Pong Parallel, I think it's just a question of when rather than if they do eventually leave the magazine, which at least for one of them, I think you'll be happy that that's the
No,
case.
I mean, I don't root for cancellations. I mean, I don't care about it. If other people want to read it, that's fine. I'll be disappointed when Ekiden Bros is canceled, and I don't say if, because I kind of like it. I think it has its moments actually, and I think it has the last couple chapters. I think it has significantly improved. I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think in the last couple chapters I think it's been better. I think it has some interesting ideas. It's not great. I don't think any of them are great. Of the four, even though it's not my favorite of the group, I too would have thought Kaitagami is the one that had the best chance to survive. Because I think it sort of has kind of a generally a jumpy aesthetic pedigree to it, but it is just kind of indistinct for me. It doesn't really do anything to stand out. Harukaze Mound, I'm surprised it is doing as well as it's doing because it seems like a very conventional sports series in a lot of ways, and those don't tend to do well in Jump. Well, not that sports series in general tend to do well in Jump, but the ones that do are not the conventional ones. Um, so I like Harukaze Mound. I don't think it's anything great, but I do like it. I think it's above average across the board without being exceptional in any way. But for a Jump series, it's only like 20 chapters old. That's perfectly fine. And many of them grow from that and to become something more than they are when they just start out. So I hope Harukaze Mound makes it because I do think it has some potential. And even if it doesn't get dramatically better, it's still pretty good. And I do think it's, at this point, based on what I'm seeing, it's the only one of the four that has a chance to survive.
With regards to Ekiden Bros, I don't think it's improved that much. I feel like there's been moments, I would say, that kind of like stand out on the page. There's been some really nice double spreads. Things are happening that are of consequence. My problem with it remains kind of what I had from
Are
those initial chapters we read. It's actually more that there's just no stakes. Everything feels really easy.
Hmm.
It's almost like slice of life-ish, like,
Hmm.
but it's trying to be a competitive sports series. But I just simply don't buy for a second that these characters are anything but great at what they're doing, and that it's a challenge. It just
Okay,
feels
fair enough.
it, yeah, it feels just very easy in a dramatic level, which is just not being that compelling. And then Harukaze Mount, maybe my one, not gripe, but I'm hoping that improves, is that I still think that we need a bit more. We need to get a bit more invested in the main character. I think he's kind of not standing out amongst the other side characters that are being introduced, which are a bit more fun and interesting and get to be quite quirky. I think there is some potential there. I just also hope that we get more connection between the brothers, because I think
Hmm.
that could be untapped potential if we don't continue to hammer down on that dynamic that we set up. I think that could be like a strength that is not really being focused on at the moment.
I agree with that. More brotherly stuff would be good.
Okay, so that's where we were last round. We did say goodbye to series this time to make room for the two more that are joining us. So let's do a little bit post mortem for Kill Blue and Nice Prison. I'll start with Kill Blue. Okay, you don't have like any experience with this, I
No,
believe. Is that right?
I'm a cipher. I know nothing.
Okay. Well, that's probably a good thing. Now you don't probably feel obligated to try it. Maybe you'll watch the first episode of the anime that got announced on the same issue that it ended. But I think I have a funny relationship to Kill Blue. I just don't think it was a especially good series. I think it was it's so general in its approach. It tried to tap into every genre. There were times where it found its footing near the end, but it was struggling. It was struggling for, I would say, the second half of its lifespan, and it did a thing that becomes quite sad to read, which is when it introduces plot points and then it has to abandon them because it's trying to scramble to find something to grip the reader. And it did that about two or three times with some arcs, that it built up something that could be long term, and then it all eventually falls apart. It's a weird one. You know, was it cancelled? Was it gently pushed by the editors? Did they give him X amount of time, slightly more than a normal like newbie flop would get? We don't know the ins and outs. It was quite a long title to get cancelled. If you're over 100 chapters, that is quite rare. And to even be rewarded, quote unquote, with an anime on the day that you're cancelled, it's a weird mixed message, which I think is leaving people a bit confused about the decision to have it be cancelled. Surely you would think, even if it's not a great performer, you could keep it in the magazine and it's going to have some sort of boost. But apparently they didn't have enough confidence to have it keep going. And then Nice Prison, I'm just glad to see it gone. Maybe you're a better person than me, Anzo. I was rooting for its downfall because it was bringing down my reading experience of all the titles that I get through every week. And now there's nothing. There's actually nothing in the magazine that's that low down compared to everything else that tarnishes my mood. So yeah, I'm very
Well,
very content with that being gone.
I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to pretend that we have to talk more about Nice Prison. It's awful. It was awful from the beginning. It followed the path that. The only thing that's interesting about Nice Prison is how in the world somebody decided this was a Weekly Shounen Jump serialization. But that being said, that's as much. I think it doesn't deserve any more of anyone's time than that. The only other thing I will say about Kill Blue is, I'm a person who did not like Kurobas, so well, even while I didn't read Kill Blue, one of the reasons I didn't read it is because I didn't like his manga that was successful. So the odd, or her, I don't even remember. I think it's a him.
Yeah, Sam. And I didn't love
Yeah,
that series either.
no, I had no expectation that anything he wrote would be good. But I just want to say for the record, as someone especially as someone who's a basketball fan, Kurobaz is one of the dumbest sports manga I've ever read. I mean, it's or seen in anime form. It's just I really offensively stupid to me. So I'm not at all surprised that Kill Blue tanked. So onward and upward. Let's move on to more interesting topics. Is how I view it.
Before we jump into the new series, then, so why don't let's do a little check in as well on any other. Are there any other
Yeah.
Weekly Shonen Jump titles you want to give a shout out to, how they're doing at the moment?
Yeah, the one from a couple rounds ago, I think is worth a brief interlude. Otter, and I know we'll touch on that briefly because I think there's some interesting stuff going on with that, that is worth kind of a bit of discussion. I'm still following. I would say, Blue Box irritating the hell out of me with some of its directions going, this close to the end. We think, Hima-Ten, I know, everyone loves Kana, so it's great to see her getting so much screen time in that one.
Boo.
Ichi still great, still pretty wild. But I mean, the interesting one to me is Oter, because that's the one that's kind of existing in this sort of strange nether place that not anyone, this purgatory where not anyone is quite sure exactly what's going on with it. So, I like it and have from the start. So I have a sort of vested interest in that. I will say, for the record, just for our listener viewers, I even though I really liked Odor of the Flame, I'd given up on reading it because I felt like, well, this is a lock to be canceled. And you kept trying to convince me, well, if you like it, you have to be loyal to it and see what the author's going to do and all this other stuff, and you should read it. But I at one point I had totally, I stopped reading it just because I was like, well, why cause myself pain when I know it's not going to make it? So the fact that I did go back to reading it and catch up is sort of indicative of why the circumstances surrounding it are pretty interesting as I view it.
Yeah, it's kind of having, you could call it a bit of a moment relative to how it's been performing up until this time, which is very badly. There, it was seemed like it could just end alongside this round with Nice Prison. That wouldn't have been shocking whatsoever. It was often even below Nice Prison in the rankings, but you could tell when both Kill Blue and Nice Prison were wrapping up narratively that Ultra wasn't. It was very much setting up more to come. I think there have been times where it has been quite good, and I think I like it more than a lot of the people online who are quite skeptical of it. It's a funny one because it does get, especially with Western readers, it does get quite good views on Manga Plus. I think it does have a bit of a fan base behind it, likely because of the name recognition and wanting Kawaguchi to succeed. But it also does have its detractors who kind of just want it to be gone from the magazine because it's not worth keeping.
Well, fuck them.
That's the ultra fan in you speaking. I'm somewhere in the middle, but I'm also I lean more positive to it. I am not against it having what seems like at least one more round to prove itself. I think it does really have to turn things around in a pretty sizable way to survive. We can talk about, I'll bring up the end of the episode about what we think the next round is going to be in terms of things ending, but it's not impossible that it sticks around more. But yeah, it got a color page recently. It jumped out of the bottom 5. Whether that is an editorial push to try and give it that last chance, or whether that is a result of increasing popularity, we shall see. The first volume sales were not great, so yeah.
I was just going to say, for readers who don't know, it was ranking basically at the bottom of the table of contents every week, but it did get a center color page, which is very rare for any series that's going to be canceled. And it jumped in, as you said, it jumped in the most recent table of contents. So the question that one might be asking is why did it survive? Which I think is the interesting question here, and we can speculate on that. So it's either we can look at this and say either it's getting some win in its sales from English or overseas markets, or it's got an editorial staff that's really behind it and wants to give it additional opportunities. And my speculation was perhaps it was because there was some sense of, well, we screwed this guy over with the whole Shinigami editor thing with Red Hood. Maybe, we owe it to him to go out on a limb this time and really give this thing every chance. And maybe also the editors just really think this is a big talent and deserves, they want him to break through. I mean, all of this is speculation. We don't know. But I guess my question to you would be, since we can't know the answer to these questions, has a series, and if so, what series in recent years, been where Oter was and come back to survive to a long-term serialization.
Yes, it has happened. It is rare because Weekly Shounen Jump is a beast that is
Cutthroat.
not very forgiving often. Yes, I mean, if I think of some examples, Skit Dance is a very famous case where it ranked, I believe, last place on its first rank chapter. And
Mm.
for a lot of its initial run, it was very much, if not near the bottom, at the bottom. And just by circumstance and luck and maybe some hope, it managed to survive for what went on for, I believe, over 300 or 300ish chapters. Uh, there are other cases that are not as big a success. I think of something like PPP. That started off quite badly in the rankings. I think there was an actual shift in the place in the narrative. I think I said that is chapter 8 or 9. And that seemed to also be the case with general readership, where it did bump up and it had a good run for about a year and a bit. But then eventually it kind of caught up in itself and it didn't become a success in the long run. Mission Yozakura Family, that's another one that started out quite low in the magazine, but that kind of also got very lucky. There was a lot of long running established titles that ended around the 2020 time when that started. So I don't think that would have survived if that wasn't the case, but it managed to avoid the axe. And then I would say something
So
like Kagurabachi. That's one that was in the bottom five often, and then suddenly it just had a moment, and
yeah,
it's now at the top of the magazine.
not as badly as Oter was doing, for the record, but it wasn't doing well, but not
No,
as badly as Oter was doing when it started. Now, let me just say this. When you mentioned Sket Dance, by sticking with that, whether through luck or not only did they get what wound up being a very successful series, but they built a long-term relationship with a mangaka who's now had 3 very successful series for them. And I think at some point you do wonder if there isn't a conversation happening saying, listen, it's not just this series. If we believe in this person's talent, if we stick it out a little longer here and it does turn around, we could have something long term here. It could be more than just a series like it was with with Kente. It was Shinohara Kente. It was 3 series they got out of that, and whatever his next one will be after Witch Watch presumably will be with them too. And it was all theoretically because they didn't cancel Sket Dance when it would have been very easy to do it. So, as I speculated, maybe there's some editorial backing here, whatever the reason for that is. Maybe there's more editorial backing with Oter than there might be in a typical case.
what's going to come down to, I believe, is are we going to see an improvement of performance in terms of sales? Is it going to have more of a buzz around it? As long as it doesn't feel forced and they're beating a dead horse, I'm not against it. But yes, we'll probably even know this time by the end of the year when we have another serialization round where its actual chances of survival remain. Touch on other titles. Ichi the Witch just won the Suginikuru Next Manga Awards, first place in the physical category, just like Kagurabachi did last year. So you can probably expect a nice boost in its sales, hopefully. So yeah, it's following the tracks of the other future big pillar of the magazine. This like pair that are kind of yin and yang in terms of tones and focus and everything. So I think their existence, at least in the magazine right now, is only a positive thing. Maybe all the other series that I love are doing great right now. Akane Banashi, I think it's just this great. I love it as always. Another one I would shout out actually that's having a bit of a moment is Shinobi Undercover. I believe in the past few weeks, the average table of contents ranking is getting is I believe like third or fourth in the magazine. It's really having a moment. I think there's a shift that kind of makes it feel like it's going in a more Sakamoto Days direction in terms of high octane action and these great spreads and the choreography, and it's got a really fun like cute cast as well, and some nice little rom-com elements. I think there's, if you want to get on board of something that is going to have a future in the magazine, and maybe in 2 years' time people will be like, oh, this could be a thing. Now I think is the time. I think it is genuinely improved since its first couple of volumes on that front.
Good to
Yeah,
know.
that's my little shout out. Let's jump over to the 2 new titles that we have.
Indeed.
Yes, so the first one, you might have heard of it, it's called Jujutsu Kaisen. This one is Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. The mangaka is Gege Akutami, of course, but he's only doing the story this time. This time we have the art by Yuji Iwasaki, who recently was the artist with Nishio for Cypher Academy, which got cancelled, if not a year ago, the year before that. This is a pair that kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think when we had the conversation with My Hero Academia, we were talking about, oh, is there going to be a sequel, a spin off? Even though there already are spin offs of that series while it was ongoing, mind you. I don't think anyone actually thought Jujutsu Kaisen was a series that would be in that conversation, so it was a little bit surprising. But here we are. Whereas Jujutsu Kaisen with aliens, we're 6 to 8 years in the future after the events of the original series. This could be spoilers if you haven't read the manga or anime only, but also I feel like they're making a conscious choice here and not going too crazy and revealing things. So, like I said, Jujutsu Kaisen with aliens, there's a race of these aliens called the Sumerians who are contacting Earth. They want to use it as this place where they can move their people and they can live there now. They have a diplomat who joins there and goes to Japan, and he is intermingling with the sorcerers there, who are the not even the next generation, the generation after that of the original characters in the series. So we're talking about the grandchildren of certain very prominent and popular characters from Jujutsu Kaisen. Yeah, this kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, and I think a lot of people were like annoyed maybe by that premise of series plus aliens, or suddenly the aliens arrived. This isn't a series where it leaned into the sci-fi in that way. It was definitely more cultural fantasy in terms of like the mythos that it was bringing out. So it definitely drew more on history rather than the future. But this was a little bit surprising, but I actually am quite fond of Alien series, and yeah, this does feel like JJK's Boruto in terms of it being a sequel with a different person doing some of the work, and also just the focus of the artwork. Just to mention is that it's going to be 3 volumes as of right now. Who knows if they extend it due to popularity? We shall see. But 3 volumes at its current rate will be around 25 chapters, and that will take us until around March. Enzo, I'm curious. I have some thoughts, but I'm curious on what you think, especially your perspective of, I believe, not being a big fan of JJK, and you've probably just gone into this almost like you had no previous experience with the series.
Pretty much. Basically, I watched maybe 8 to 10 episodes of the anime when it first started. Never read any of the manga, but watched maybe 8 to 10 episodes of the anime. Um, didn't hate it for the record, and I didn't know ill feelings, but it just didn't interest me. It was one of those series I was tagging along with, trying to maybe get to that nexus point where it's like, oh, that's why this is so popular, and I never got there. So I don't I don't really have any strong feelings about JJK, except I find it to be comprehensively mediocre, both in terms of art and writing, especially writing. I think Gege's art was better than their writing, but um, generally speaking, my thoughts on the sequel, whatever you want to call this spin-off, um, it it's fine. We're only talking about 2 chapters here, which to be fair is not that much of a sample size, but there was nothing about it that really jumped out to me as being noteworthy in terms of quality. The one thing that I would sort of say about it is it seemed very obsessed with this whole notion of aren't Japanese people special? Wow, Japanese people are special. Everyone acknowledges how special Japanese people are. Only Japanese people are special enough to do these things. Even America admits Japanese people are special. It seemed like that was something like every 3 panels somebody was talking about how Japan was special and how America acknowledges only Japan could do this and blah, blah, blah. That seemed a little forced and transparent to me. So that annoyed me, frankly. Um, the other thing I would say is I know you haven't read it, and I know Aliens. There's certainly no copyright on Alien manga or fiction generally. There's a shit ton of it. This premise here is quite reminiscent of Tokyo Aliens, which, for the record, I think is far better. But there is definitely a similarity there. There's a very distinct sense in the premise of Tokyo Aliens, even to the setup and the some of the character dynamics. So yeah, like Tokyo Aliens, if Tokyo Aliens weren't that good, is kind of how I would describe it. It just, it's fine. The Japan exclusivity, that was a little annoying. Other than that, it really didn't do anything in a positive or negative way to stand out to me. It was just kind of, and the artwork again. I didn't read his prior series because Nishio Isin is nails on a blackboard to me. Anything he was involved with, I would stay far away from. So I don't know Itagaki's art. It didn't make a big impression on me one way or the other here. I just thought it was kind of okay. And the same with the writing. I just thought it was kind of like, it's all right.
It's a couple of things I would say. I did see some people who were kind of up in arms that this was happening, that it was going to get a spin off, that it was somehow ruining Gege's legacy or whatever. First of all, I don't hold Gege Akutami in some super high regard as an author. This is this is completely fine to have a successful
Yeah,
series get a spin-off. This makes complete
absolutely.
sense.
Absolutely. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. It was a huge, huge, huge financial success. Good luck to him. Congratulations. And it was a huge success that ended relatively early. And the fact that they wanted to go back and try to mine that gold again, it's not remotely surprising. I don't think you should read any deeper into it.
There's nothing more to that. I don't think this has ruined his reputation in any way. I am not the biggest fan of Gege Akutami as of the final two arcs in the manga. I will say I'm watching the second season right now, and I do think the anime improves on that material quite a bit. I think he just has a very cluttered way of expositing things, and he has this, I say, as like a unique talent for just making things really boring when they don't need to be. He just has the characters. He has the characters explain and say things in a way that just feels really verbose, and goes back to my comparison I have of him kind of trying to be like Togashi in that way. He does a lot of narrator stuff as well, especially late in Jujutsu Kaisen, which in my experience really took me out of it, which it did not in Chimera Ant arc. I think it, not that he's a bad writer, I just think he's not. I just don't think he's at that level. So I think
Yeah.
it comes across to me as just a lot of fluff for concepts that are really not that interesting or complicated. Whereas I would say, at least with Togashi in this arc, I know it's not your favorite of the series, but I think it goes hand in hand because it is quite complex and all the things that are being juggled. Whereas I don't think anything
Yeah.
presented in these chapters or late in Jujutsu Kaisen is much different from a typical battle
To
shonen. I think what's going to be interesting to see is how this does perform in terms of volume sales, compared to the original series, if it has a big drop off or if it kind of maintains that fan base. So, yeah,
Can I
it's going to
make
be
a
around
prediction?
Go for it.
It will do fine. It will do well. It will be a big drop off. It'll do the first volume will do between 100 150,000. The next two will do 50 to 80. That's my prediction. Which by
Okay.
most standards would be a big success, but for GJK would be a big drop off.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was going to probably around the same level as like Bleach to Burn the Witch. I believe Burn the Witch sold around, oh, I actually can't remember. It's somewhere between 200 and 400 in a month. So I wouldn't be surprised if it, at least in the first volume, is around that level. And it's going to
Let's
be in the
see.
magazine for a predetermined amount of times.
Yep.
That's what we're getting. Second series we have from this batch is Someone Hertz. This is by A.
Yay.
Yamano. Yay! Spoiler. This is by a rookie that I was quite looking forward to seeing, even though their one shots hadn't been fully translated. I always find the art very cute, and like subject of the one shots by skimming through them seemed just quite interesting. Yeah, it was like a new name that I was predicting would come in the magazine, and yeah, I'm glad to see them there. And this is romcom that we're getting from them. So, brief synopsis for this is Mimi shares this hobby of late night comedy radio shows with this funny girl in the class, but they listen to it at 3 a.m. in the morning. You can submit your jokes that you have to those comedians, and they both listen in, and they're both already tuned into this. And it's not even a spoiler to say this because it comes midway through
Yeah,
the
the
first
first
chapter,
chapter.
but there is someone in on the radio show who gets all these one-liners in that is quite popular, and our main character wants to best them. And then we do find out that this girl in his class is in fact that person, and she sets him the task of becoming funnier than her, and working together, I suppose, to craft his skills in comedy. And um, along with that we'll get some rom, and yeah, it's just
Eventually.
a cute little radio rom com late night comedy series. Fun little quirky premise by a newcomer. My initial instinct, you might disagree, I feels like this could be Weekly Shonen Jump's teasing manga. That's a very popular
I do
trope,
disagree.
especially I think as of late with rom coms. And yeah, I think it's not surprising that we are getting another rom com, because it's worth noting that Yu Saito, the current editor in chief of Weekly Shonen Jump, he launched both Nisekoi and We Never Learn, as well as Kuroko no Basket. So yes, he had two of what are some of the biggest rom coms in the past and last decade. So people are expecting that he would throw a few more in the magazine, and we're getting one here to go alongside Hima-Ten. So yes, I think this was just very cute, very adorable. I think the art style has a nice, unique quality to it, where it doesn't really feel comparable to anything else in the magazine at the moment. It's not overly detailed or anything; it's quite straightforward and simple. But I think it's just like cuteness squared in terms of characters, in terms of presentation.
And yeah, again, we're talking about one chapter. And so we are very much jumping to conclusions here. It's hard to know. I will say, though, more often than not, our personal impressions of the first chapters that we've done have wound up being pretty consistent with how we ended up viewing the series ongoing. So, um, I my view partially is partially because, as you said, with who the editor in chief is now. But I mean, they know that Ao no Hako is ending at some point relatively soon. They want another tentpole rom com to take its place. Um, Hima-Ten is not that. Hima-Ten is sort of a fine, modestly successful second tier series. It's not it's not really ever going to be a foundational piece, but it's doing perfectly well. But it's never going to step in and be the rom com the way Ao no Haku is. So I think he's in part searching for whatever that could be. I have my strong suspicions that it won't be Someone Hurts, because this doesn't strike me as a series that's really tailor made for Weekly Jump. It, in fact, it if it's going to be in the Jump family at all, it's something like Jump Plus maybe, but I would never have guessed it as a Weekly Jump series if I hadn't known that's what it was. And for the record, I know nothing about the author's one shots. I hadn't read any of them, so I'm just going in completely cold turkey here. I really like the first chapter. I think it is very cute. It is very funny in a kind of a low key way. Droll is how I would describe it. I don't think it's going hardcore in the teasing and Takagi-san fashion. I don't think that's like, eventually Takagi-san evolved past it, but for the hook with that series was the teasing, and that was really the main gag for like the first 100 chapters. And it was only in time that it became mainly a romance and focused more on the cute, sweet side of that more than the teasing. I don't think teasing is ever going to reach that level of importance in Someone Hurts. I just don't see it. I could be wrong. I will also say, though, that one of the things I really liked here is this whole idea of being in high school, a kid, really interested in something like kind of vaguely uncool, like comedy, and staying up late, listening on the radio, and, you feeling like you're really sort of bonding with other people who are into this. And that's a very kind of primal adolescent experience. And when you find someone else who's also into that, that's like a very powerful thing. And I think the first chapter does a really good job of communicating that feeling that you have when you're an adolescent and you find someone else who's into your weird hobby, how good that feels. Um, and the fact of the matter is, Mime is the kind of the hook with him is he's like really, really good at most things and really, and he's successful. I think he's the student council president or the class president. I forget which.
Yeah.
But
Which
but
I
he's
feel,
but he's
correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's kind of rare for a main character to be that.
it is absolutely rare. The president of the student council, that's never the main character. That's always like the secondary character, right? And so, but the hook with him is this like one thing that he's not good at is the one thing he's passionate about, which is comedy. And these two Manzai guys who host this radio show, he loves them and he's desperate for the acceptance, which she gets, as you said, all the time because she sends in she sends in, her name means jellyfish, by the way, which I think is kind of funny, but she sends in all this stuff and constantly gets it read on the air. And she's the one who kind of encourages him. Well, listen, don't give up. Your jokes are better than you think you are, than you think they are. So, I think it is really cute. Overall, my feeling very positive. Again, only one chapter. I have strong feelings. One, I really like it. Two, I think it's probably DOA because it's in the wrong magazine. Those are my two feelings about it at this point.
It's funny that we have a series that ended recently from Jump Plus, which is Shoten. That was a Mansai comedy series that I did read. I thought it was quite good, but that definitely played it more into like making it almost like a sports series. Something like similar to what Akane Banashi does and how it presents those sorts of performances. Whereas here, it's going to go alongside the relationship in what is hopefully going to be quite like a cute and endearing way. What I will say is that for Yamano is that they have a task of, I think, making sure that what is supposed to be funny is funny. That's maybe a bit of a challenge when something within the text
Absolutely
is acknowledged as successful. That has to come across. And I have seen some people say that maybe the jokes didn't land for them. I thought, for the most part, the ones that were intended to be funny were quite funny. I thought the sidewalk one was quite good.
Here's the other thing, though, is what's funny in Japanese is not always going to be funny when it's translated into English. Yeah. So what it has to do to survive is be funny to Japanese people, for the record. I mean, I still think, despite our odor conversation, that's the main challenge it has. But it will be even harder, not that it's going to consciously try, but it's going to be even harder and a big challenge for the translator for it to be funny to Western audiences.
Yeah, so hopefully that isn't used against it too much, because I thought it was like pleasantly funny in the ways that it was intending to be, for the most part. I think, yes, now that I'm thinking on it, maybe it's not going to be a teasing manga because Kurage, I feel like she has, you said droll, she definitely has this sarcastic, very laid back personality, but she's definitely rooted in like encouragement for this
I
boy
agree.
that she
Absolutely.
enjoys. So it's just going to be a very positive series, I think.
Absolutely.
Maybe similar vein to Psych House. I'm thinking like in vibes, just seeing these characters hang out is going to be.
Wow, now that you mention it, now I'm totally seeing it. Yep.
And it does feel like
I loved Psych House.
I
loved Psych House.
It does feel the series like even if it did last for, let's say, 18, 19 chapters, I wouldn't be opposed to just seeing these characters hang out for 18, 19 chapters. I think that'd be very endearing and very cute.
Sure.
I think even like just in this scene where they're outside on the bench for the last half of this first chapter, I just thought that was a very strong scene. I think it really sold me on their bond, and their potential as a pairing. So I'm going to be rooting for it. I would say this was like a solid B+ chapter for me.
Yep, me too.
And we didn't do it for Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, but I would say like
C.
Yeah, like B- for me. It is what it is. It's a funny one. We've got a series which has a predetermined amount of time in the magazine and a series which we feel probably doesn't have a lot of time left on it as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if they both actually end up being around this 3-volume, 25 chapter length.
I'd take that right now. If you gave me 3 volumes, I'd say great. I'll take it.
Why don't we look ahead then to what we're going to get possibly leaving the magazine in the next round. There's a few ones we can mention. I think a lot of the ones from the last serialization round are going to be in danger coming up. I think Kaitagami, shockingly, and then Ekiden Bros and Ping Pong Parallel are the two very obvious ones. And you just have to
They're
throw out
dead.
Ultra of the Flame in there because we just don't know where it's going to go. So it's going to really depend on how many series they want to add into the magazine. I think those are the four ones that realistically have a shot of ending by the end of the year. I don't think any of the series that are going to be concluding naturally, those being Alyssa Samurai, Blue Box, and Witch Watch, are at that stage at the moment. I would think of those three, Alyssa Samurai will be the first one. I wouldn't be shocked if that's sometime in
Interesting.
early next year. That
I would
really
have
is.
said Blue Box.
See, I'm at a point now where I don't know if Blue Box is setting up a whole other year of content.
Yeah, it could happen. It could happen.
So, but it's managed to stretch out the last, I would say, 20 chapters in a pretty reflective, slow moving way. So, yeah, those are the two that I think wouldn't be shocked if they end next year. Witch Watch, I still think, has some more time. More time for you to maybe catch up with the manga, or
Well, I
are
also
you gonna
think that
remain
the
anime
Witch.
only?
I've actually been reading the manga bits and pieces of it.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know if. See, I think the anime will get another season, probably. So I'm not like feeling urgently that I have to read the manga. It's a really good adaptation. I mean, it's just doing a really, really good job. And because I didn't like the manga that much, going back to it now, I like it better than I did. But I still think that the anime is getting every possible ounce of juice out of the manga that it could possibly get. And in the process, it's helping the manga. It's giving it a little boost. And I suspect whatever his intention, Shinohara, he'll finish it when he wants to finish it. I don't think he's going to get pushed. I think they'll let him run it out however long he wants to run it within reason. And I think the anime will get another season. So whether I'll go ahead and fully read the manga, I don't know. I can't say. Blue Box, I think it could be very interesting if they decide, like, okay, but I think the series has to change. It can't be Taiki's school life now. That has to be like the B plot. The A plot has to be, okay, his girlfriend has her own place. He's a third year. They're in a real relationship. It's going to places, different places that it can go now because of their circumstances. And that really has to take center stage. If it tries to still be a school life series without chi in it during the school life sections, I think it's doomed to mediocrity if it goes that route.
Yeah, we'll wait and see with Blue Box. It is also worth noting that Blue Box, if it keeps running for even not that long, it will break the record for the longest running romcom in Weekly Shounen Jump, which is currently held by Nisekoi at 25 volumes.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, so I think it's very likely that it could break that. And yeah, I'm actually glad that you've come around to Witch Watch, even if just in anime form for the most part, because I think Kento Shinohara is very talented, and
I
you
agree.
you ought to give Sket Dance another go because I still
I
hold it
should.
as
Yep. I
it's his
should.
be-
I
it's his
should.
best of his titles, in my opinion.
And there is a certain quality with Shinohara that you may not get him at first, and he sort of wears you down. And at some point, you like, okay, I get where he's going. Okay, I'm in. And so it is entirely possible now, having gone through the Astra experience, which I really really liked, and starting to really enjoy Witch Watch now. If I went back to Sket Dance, it's entirely possible that I might feel differently about it. So at some point, yes, either anime or manga, I don't know which, but at some point I'm going to go back and give that another shot.
And then the last point I was going to say was we could have Hunter x Hunter back. Fingers crossed.
Yes,
The
yes.
indication of that coming is usually that we get a new volume wrapping up the last batch of 10 chapters. So if you see that announced in the coming months, then you can know that the next 10 batches or the next batch of 10 chapters is on the
Yeah.
horizon. And as of right now, he is, I believe, just has finished the backgrounds for 419. So he has technically one more, then he's ready to get
Yeah,
that going.
I think at this point we can say it's only a question of when the magazine wants to do it. That as far as content is concerned, they could do it anytime they want. He's as you said, he's basically finished with 9 of the 10 chapters. So, and we know we're only going to get 10 for a while, so they have to maximize. You know, they don't have to think about what can we do to pump up the volume sales, because whenever the volume comes out, it'll sell a million copies because it's Hunter x Hunter, and every volume sells a million copies. My feeling was we'd see the new batch of 10 chapters at the start of 26. I know you think it could very easily happen in the last quarter of 25, huh?
Yeah, usually if Hunter x Hunter does resume, it doesn't necessarily take the spot of a cancelled title. It kind of just tags
Right.
along with the timing of a new serialization round. So, yeah, let's keep our eyes peeled if that comes in the next, 6 to 8 to 9 weeks.
Yep. Bring it on, baby. I'm looking forward to it. Just don't put Gone on the cover this time, please.
Yeah, so it's been a fun one. We've only got this little batch of two, which one is predetermined, and the other that we don't feel so optimistic, even though we really enjoy it. And we've kind of just kept it general and gone through the state of the magazine. It feels like where we are right now. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been quite informative as well. And everyone, let's get behind someone Hertz because we
Ah,
need.
you stole the words right out of my mouth. Please read Someone Hurts. Every little bit helps. Read it
Yeah,
on the official app. Boost those numbers. You'll be a big fish in a small pond. Everyone who reads that series will be making a difference, in my opinion.
yeah, I think that's a good way to end this. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you Enzo for chatting Weekly Shounen Jump with me. And yeah, tune in next time. Let's see what series we have next on the horizon.
Sounds
Bye
good.
bye.
Stay frosty.
Bye bye.